You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances. More information at wexfordinsurance.com.
A major challenge for employers with a distributed workforce has been having a clear understanding of what staff outputs are. I'm joined now by a local entrepreneur who has created a solution to this problem. Good morning, Tony Redmond from RWorks.
Morning, Karl.
Tell me about RWorks.
Okay, well, RWorks is the cloud-based software system that looks at what people are doing when they say they're working and matches it up against the tasks that they've been asked to do. So, for example, it shows for people working in different locations like teleworkers or people in remote offices, it gives the worker themselves an idea of how productive they're being for a particular day. But it also gives their employers an idea of how well the workers in different locations are getting on different tasks without having to constantly bother them by ringing up on the phone and saying, how are you doing with this, how are you doing with that? So it saves a lot of time in that regard.
And where did the idea come from for this?
The idea came from the fact that I was spending my working week driving up and down the N11 to get work in Dublin, which is not available in Wexford, and the kind of work that I was doing was could be done anywhere. It's just the company that I was working for, basically, their only constraint was that they have no visibility of somebody who's working at home in their spare room or home office. So it came out of necessity, really, because I suppose most people in Wexford are familiar with driving up and down the N11 for work. So I built a software solution that manages that problem.
And what is your own background, Tony?
I'm from Wexford, essentially. I graduated from WIT in 1991 and went back lecturing in WIT for 4 years. And I went to Dublin as a software developer and worked my way up to being Director of Software Research for SmartForce, which was a .com era global success in the US.
After that, where did you go next?
Yeah, I went off to a startup then in Dublin, and after about 18 months kind of got tired of, didn't see a market for what they were doing, so I then moved back to Wexford and set up as a consultant and spent the next 5 or 6 years driving up and down the N11 for various organisations like Vodafone and Canada Life and Public Appointment Service and so on.
And it was during that time that you identified an opportunity for RWorks to be created?
Yeah, because I mean that kind of getting up very early in the morning and driving up and down the road is very, very difficult and quite tiring. So what I used to do was spend my lunchtime. I used to have quite a lot of ideas, business ideas, and I'd spend my lunchtime teasing out those ideas. And I had 5 or 6 of them. One of them that I kept adding more detail for them, and when I started doing more research, saw more opportunities in it, was RWorks, this whole management of remote working.
And when was RWorks created?
RWorks as a project we kicked off in 2008. Company was incorporated in 2010, and the system went live in Q2 of 2011. So it's been quite a long project. I suppose that's the problem with all software projects where there's a lot of depth to it, is that all of the effort's up front.
I know technology is changing at a phenomenal pace. How do you keep up with that change for such a long project lead time?
In terms of keeping up with the technology, while technology is changing, there's still some fundamentals. Like everything is going to work on the internet, whether it's called a cloud or anything else. It's still basically an internet-based system. So we knew that part wasn't going to change. I mean, the advent of mobile and so on comes in. Yes, fair enough, and it's a new platform, but we see that as an add-on to the desktop and not something that's going to replace the desktop. We do spend quite a lot of time keeping an eye on the technology and watching where it's coming. And my background is that. When I was Director of Software Research for SmartForce, my job was to keep an eye on technology.
To take me back to 2008, what was the first stage of research that you carried out?
One of the things I started doing was looking at teleworking and getting an understanding of the whole remote working and the problems associated with it and the cost of doing it and the cost benefits. Like we know, for example, that after doing a lot of research, the cost benefit of remote working is like €10,000 per employee per annum can be saved by an employer by letting people work from home. So we did quite a lot of research on that. We read an awful lot of academic work and a lot of practical work. People like Sun Microsystems would have done a huge amount of research in this stuff and realized that there is a massive, massive market there for people who are going to work from home. And there's a lot of things going on in terms of carbon credits. The price of fuel is going up. You always hear about upward only rents and so on. All of these things contribute to this kind of perfect storm for remote working.
Can you share with me some numbers in terms of the amount of people working from home, let's say, for instance, in the US, the UK and in Ireland?
In the US, it's around 17 million, depending on the studies that you hear about. 17 million people in the US work from home. In the UK, it's 3 million, about 1.3 million of which fall into our actual requirements as a market. And in Ireland, it's 38,400 according to the last survey that was done by the CSO.
So on that basis, the market that you're after really is the UK and the US?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've done some initial kind of forays into the Irish market, and there's a couple of things that go against it. A, the market is small, and B, the attitude towards working from home here is not quite as advanced as it is in the US and the UK, where they have laws that basically mean that in certain categories people are allowed to work from home 20% of the time, whereas we don't have those kind of laws here.
So legislation is the main difference. How about attitude? Does that play a part in it?
Totally. Legislation is a great thing. In actual fact, if you look at legislation in the US, it's driven out of necessity. So, for example, in the winter of 2009, 2010, in the US, Washington almost shut down because of snowstorms. So they instantly see that there is a requirement there for it. But they also are far more progressive from a management point of view. They see the benefits. In Ireland, we have this attitude that if I can't see somebody, they're not working. I don't trust you if I can't see you in front of me every day. And that's an attitude that you don't see so much in the UK and definitely not in the US.
As an internationally traded service, it ticks the box for Enterprise Ireland. How supportive have they been?
We're an Enterprise Ireland client. It can be difficult enough to get in with Enterprise Ireland, but once you get into Enterprise Ireland, they literally do try and move heaven and earth to help you out. And they have helped us in terms of meeting people in California when I was there as part of the Techavate thing. And also they've helped us into the UK. They've helped us out with grants. They've been great for advice. They're fantastic. I have to say they're absolutely fantastic. They are difficult enough to get into. You kind of have to earn your stripes to get in Enterprise Ireland, but once you're in, you're in.
In relation to the software system itself, how does it work?
It's kind of in two halves. It has a little application that comes down and sits on your desktop and looks at what applications and what documents you have open and tracks time that you spend in each application and each document. We don't do things like recording key presses or taking screen grabs or anything like that, but we literally look at the tasks that you've been asked to do. And when we see you doing something that matches up with that, we track time against it. So if you're asked to do a marketing report, for example, and we see you with Word open and you're writing a document called marketing report, we say, well, you know what he's doing we can track time against that task. That information is then sent to our website where you can then go in and run reports showing how well you're getting on, or project reports and predicting when projects will be complete and so on.
Is the system foolproof?
I don't think any system is foolproof, Karl. There certainly has to come a point where a manager stands up and basically says, okay, well, I can see certain things are not right here and so on. But we've made it as easy as possible to install, incredibly easy to install. And we also have given as much information as we can without being a big brother type system. So it's a management aid. It's a tool to help management. It's not something that's big brother, and it's not something that's trying to catch people out who are working from home either.
How long did it take to build the software?
2.5 years. There is more code in the RWorks system than there is in 10 average size novels in terms of lines. So it was 2.5 years of long graft and long nights.
Where did the access to finance come into that?
Partly, it's kind of an interesting story. I suppose it's quite classical in terms of it's a bootstrapping project in that I continued doing some contracting, partly from the offices here in Wexford Enterprise Centre and partly on site. And at the same time built the system over the weekend. So we kind of financed a lot of it. Certainly until the very latter stages of it, we self-financed it. So it's only at the point where we're going to market that we've brought on external finance. What
have been the biggest challenges to date for RWorks?
Finance and time, I suppose. I'm the guy who came up with the idea, and I'm the guy who has to build the system and has built the system, and that itself takes its toll. It's very difficult when you're literally working 7 days a week, 12 or 14 hours a day for a couple of years, and then finance obviously becomes a crucial part of any company, really.
And how have you coped with both of those?
I'm still working incredibly long hours, so I haven't coped. In terms of the finance, we have had we have had a seed investor on board. We've also had a lot of help from Enterprise Ireland, and in fairness, I have to say our bank has been very good as well.
In relation to the seed investor, how did that come about?
That was a mutual friend. This particular investor was looking for something to put money into, and contacted somebody that we have in common, and basically they pointed our direction. And this particular gentleman saw the direction where we're going and saw the potential of it, and took it from there.
Tell me about the future for RWorks.
The future is incredibly bright. Like we were saying before, we don't see our market really as Ireland. It's great. We do have some Irish customers, and that's fantastic. But the huge potential is in the US, and we see our future is all about creating partnerships with people like Tier 1 systems integrators in the US. And also with people in the US who have a vested interest in our space, i.e. those teleworking organizations. And we've started down that road, and are making a lot of progress down that way. And we're doing the same in the UK. So we see the future is incredibly bright. I mean, what we have is something that, the more people use it, the more people keep wanting to use it. So it's not something that's opportunistic, that I only need it for 2 days or something like that. When they start using the system, the more they use it, the more data the system has on them. So therefore, the more valuable it becomes. So couple that with the size of our market, and the future is very bright.
Tony, thanks very much for joining me this morning, and I wish RWorks the best of luck in the future.
You're listening to Southeast Radio's Business Matters, with thanks to Wexford Insurances. Wexford Insurances, #1 for business insurance in County Wexford.